I'm standing at, at the top of Walton Street on its junction with Kingston Road, not far from the entrance to Port Meadow, which is down there. William Lucy Way, which I've used as a starting point in various videos, is also just down there. And what I'm standing near particularly is a derelict shop. Frog Party Orange, or Frog Orange, which used to supply things like vampire cloaks, vampire blood, knights' helmets, balloons, plastic swords, and other dressing up stuff and generally fun stuff for parties. And it has a hoarding in front of it which says that work is being done by a company called Savvy, and apologising for the inconvenience. That hoarding has been there unchanged since, well, I think at least 2 years, probably since the start of the pandemic, and absolutely nothing has been done. And that, sadly, is fairly typical of Oxford. It has some wonderful university buildings and some wonderful facilities, but there's also a huge amount of neglect. I'd be very interested to know whether in the towns that Oxford is twinned with, such as Leiden in Holland and Bonn in Germany, such neglect is common too, or whether this is a peculiarly Oxford thing. Anyway, today I thought I would do an abandoned and derelict shops trail to see how much of this there is. I use two different words. An abandoned shop is one which has been left but is possibly still in good condition. A derelict shop is one that has been left and has decayed or fallen apart in some way. Frog Party Orange looks as though it's well on the way to becoming derelict. So let me go down Walton Street, south, and see what other shops I can find. I'll also point out some of the landmarks of Walton Street. That's Walton Street Cycles, still very much alive and heavily used by cyclists, not surprisingly. Walton Street has quite a few cafes, such as Barefoot, Pizzeria, a newish espresso bar.
Red grass. Oh, look. Literally, completely my
fault. A very nice Greek cafe called Manos. And, abandoned shop number 2, Daisies. This was a flower and houseplant shop, and I think it only closed about a month ago. No notice, no indication why. It just suddenly shut its doors and covered over the windows. Telltale is always the posters that mysteriously appear on any such shop about a week after it's been left. So, okay, abandoned shop number 2, Daisies, abandoned shop number 1, Frog Party Orange. Jericho Cafe is one that's still alive. Very nice cakes. Must be Japanese restaurant. Okay, I said I'd point out some Walton Street landmarks. That's one of them. It looks like an independent cinema, and that's how it started in 1913, I think. It went through a succession of ownerships in its early years. Installed sound in 1930, which shows how fast films were developing. Briefly became a sex cinema in the 70s, then turned back into an art house. Became the Phoenix in 1977, and then the start of a chain of such cinemas, Picture House, in 1989. And then it was taken over by an outfit called Cineworld in 2012. And that marked the end of it being independent, although it still tries to give the impression that it is. And it still shows some good films. Has a nice bar. This is mainly a landmarks and abandoned shop tour, so I'm not being terribly careful in showing you the shops that are still running. For one thing, I'm too close to most of them to show them clearly. A restaurant with a particularly inane name. I don't know whether it means anything in Thai. That's a post office, but it also sells some useful stationery and newsagent type stuff and sweets. Okay, well that's landmark number 2. I've mentioned the Phoenix Picture House. This is the Oxford University Press, and it is the largest university press in the world, apparently, and the second oldest. The oldest being Cambridge University Press. And you may know that Cambridge University and Oxford University are often portrayed as being rivals. So Oxford gets the size, but not quite the age. And for those of you from recent countries, you may not be used to the span of time represented by this place. The university printed its first book in 1478 and got the legal right to print books in 1586. In those days you couldn't just go out and print anything you wanted, but apart from anything else there'd probably be worries that you were trying to subvert whatever brand of Christianity was in force at the time. But the university got that legal right just over a century later. So that's about 450 years ago. And University Press has been running ever since. Famous books include the King James Bible, which it started printing in the 1630s, and which apparently gave it significant amounts of profit in the next 250 years. And rather later, Alice in Wonderland. It's rather diminished now. It started outsourcing stuff towards the end of the last century. Maintained a small printing department in Kidlington, which is I think it's a village rather than a town, about 4 miles north of here. No, that can't be right. 2 miles north, say. But closed that division only a few years ago, losing 20 jobs in the process. So now all the printing is outsourced. This is a much newer building, obviously, and I can't show it from here, so I'm going to cross the road. This is Freuds Cafe. It started off as a church in the 19th century, 1836, I think, built in so-called Greek Revival style, meaning that it uses elements of ancient Greek buildings, notably temples. If you think of temples and the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, that gives you an idea. It stayed a church until the 1960s, when falling congregations meant that it wasn't needed as one. So eventually it was deconsecrated and used for a time as an art centre and theatre. I think it fell into a bit of disrepair and had to be closed because the authorities were worried about bits dropping off it and hitting people underneath. And then in the 80s, 1988 or so, somebody called David Freud took it over and converted it to a cafe bar, which it is, or at least I was going to say it is, but I find that it has closed too. Have a look at the door. It looks as though it's been paint stripped. And I think all the access to the building has been closed. So this is a landmark, but it's also derelict shop, or at least abandoned shop number 3. And I've only just realised that. Okay, well this is the Oxford University Blavatnik School of Government, whose function is to train politicians and other people in public service. And what it does is probably best illustrated by saying that the people who've come out of its doors, its alumni, include a British MP, 2 MPs from Panama, a youth and sports minister in the Yemen, a youth minister in the United Arab Emirates, and a mayor in Germany. It does research as well, and it has an institute called ELAC. I think it's the Institute for Institute for Ethics, Law and Armed Conflict. And its research is concerned with preventing armed conflict, which seems a very good thing. Architecture-wise, well, as I say, the Freuds' Greek revival, I don't know what style you call the Blavatnik, but it did provoke some local opposition. One guy compared it to a concrete marshmallow. And David Freud, who I just mentioned in connection with turning Freuds into a cafe, David Freud hated it because it was out of scale and overshadowed his cafe. Right, well, let's go in search of some more shops. Now I'm going to go up Little Clarendon Street and see whether there's anything closed here.
So it's doable.
This is the street that I featured in a video about architectural brutalism. Somerville College's cubicle beehive. And the horrible Oxford University graduate accommodation. Yep. Looks as though that one's gone too. Oxford Hub. Actually, it looks very much as though that has gone too, Central Living. Right, yes, that one's gone too. I can see that it's been emptied. So that Central Living is abandoned. And the Oxford Hub is abandoned. And in addition, nobody seems to be worried about keeping the place in any way attractive. Ground is full of pigeon droppings. Which is a health risk, as well as being unattractive. I never thought I would end up doing a pigeon dropping trail of Oxford.
And then everything goes horribly wrong. Yeah, I think it's like that. Kind of like places clean. Except with more Oxford.
Well, there's a shop that is opening. Looks like a rather nice Japanese restaurant. Okay, so I've been up Little Clarendon Street and I'm now passing Taylor's, which is the cafe I started from in one or two of the early videos. And I'm now going back into the city centre, southwards. Right. Okay, I've mentioned the Eagle and Child in other videos. It's a much loved pub in Oxford, and it's famous because Tolkien, author of Lord of the Rings, and C.S. Lewis, who did the Narnia books, both drank here. Looks as though that's closed too. Possibly not permanently, but I don't see any sign of work going on inside. Though there is a light that's been rigged up. Looks pretty temporary, but I can't see anything happening. And this cafe too, Greens used to have a cafe on the right with the green fascia, and it looks as though they've abandoned that, moving to the left, but I don't know what's happening to the building here. So that's two next to each other, the Eagle and Child and what used to be Greens. Just passing the Oxfam bookshop here, which I've shown you before.
Il y a genre maximum un mail, what the fuck.
This used to be a Costa cafe, Costa Coffee being a very popular brand in Britain. It was a special Costa Coffee cafe because it was also the front of the Odeon cinema. There were two Odeons in Oxford, one here and one round the corner. And this was the foyer, if you like, to the smaller. And this has been closed for, I don't know how long, but I think probably since the start of the pandemic, since the first lockdowns. Again, no sign of what's going to happen to it, no sign that anybody's doing anything with it. Right, well, let's go down Friars Entry, which is one of the least attractive alleyways in Oxford. This is Tesco, the side of Tesco. This is how Tesco look after the outside of their premises. One thing Tesco don't care about is cleanliness. And I must say that the association of pigeon droppings on the ground with baked goods from their ovens doesn't really make me want to consume the baked goods. Okay, but at least Tesco isn't actually closed. This cafe is. It never seems to survive more than a few months when it does reopen. And I think this latest incarnation of it has been closed for about 2.5 years. I'd say it's well on the way to becoming derelict rather than just abandoned. Yeah, I'm doing an abandoned cafe shop tour of Oxford.
Oh, you're looking well anyway, mate.
Right, so that's an abandoned cafe. Now, an awful lot of building space around here is occupied by what used to be a department store called Debenhams. And that closed round about the beginning of the pandemic and never reopened. And it occupies a huge amount of space. That was one of the entrances to Debenhams. You went through there was a big staircase, and you wound your way and spiralled up to the top. And all that space above Tesco and above the other ground floor shops was Debenhams.
Of the monarch. Yeah. Exactly.
So this was the main entrance to Debenhams. There was a very large foyer on the corner with an escalator sloping diagonally back into the shop and a lift nearer to us. It's been like that for since at least 2020. Would it be a good idea to use it to accommodate the homeless? Not if you run Oxford.
We don't need to leave it 2 on the dot, do we?
Now I'm on George Street, heading towards the station, heading west. That's a sort of outpost of Debenhams, which doesn't look as though it's doing anything more than the other bits of Debenhams are. Well, that appears to be closed too. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I remember the hotel as having an attached cafe over in the bit on the right where you can just see the words Brunch Bar. I used to go there sometimes on Sunday morning, I think, because nothing else was open. So was the bit on the left part of their hotel and the bit on the right, their cafe, now taken over by somebody else? I'm not sure, but it looks as though something else has been abandoned down here anyway, whatever it is. Brunch bar. And that looks pretty abandoned too, though it's nice of them to thank the NHS. That will be a leftover from the first year of the pandemic, when thanking underpaid nurses and others by means of singing outside one's house at 8 o'clock in the evening was popular. Giving them money wasn't so popular. I think this used to be a restaurant branded with the name of one of the TV chefs, possibly Jamie Oliver. Whatever it is, it's yet another building that's been left to rot, and probably left to rot since 2020. There's actually more than that, because it doesn't look as though the rest of the ground floor is used either. If this video feels a little makeshift, I apologise, because I'm working it out as I go along. I actually hadn't realised until I started doing this just how many abandoned businesses there were. Okay, STA is, or was possibly, a well-known travel company. I think they specialised in cheap flights. They certainly used to have a business here, and I think this had been closed since before the start of the pandemic. I like the idea of a Karl Marx walking tour, but I don't think it's STA organising it.
trying to.
When I spoke to you last,
Okay, well, here's yet another one, Cafe Opium. There used to be an opium den Chinese restaurant in Oxford, just around the corner. I don't think Cafe Opium is part of the same business. Whatever it is, nothing is happening there. You have to be careful with some people. This guy almost ran me over. Right, 019 resolution. I can just read the words 019 resolution on the doors of that building. Obviously, it's closed, abandoned. Okay, I've just crossed the road, so I'm standing at the east end of Hythe Street, and I'm going to walk round into Park End Street, so south and then turn west. This is the next abandoned shop, Efe's Meze Bar, Turkish restaurant. I pretty sure it's been abandoned since 2009. And in fact, I don't think it's ever even opened. It was repainted and fitted out, and then just whoever was running it must have disappeared. How is it that in all that time it can't be used for anything else? I'm not sure about Spirit. It doesn't look terribly functional. On the other hand, I can see some houseplants in it, which are either plastic or still alive, so maybe it is working. Office outlet certainly isn't. I draw cartoons and I used to use that place. And I'm pretty sure it's been shut for at least 5 years.
मतलब 25 है ना हमारी तो अगर हम दो
And that's a huge waste of space. Likewise that, I think that was Staples, which is much the same sort of business as Office Outlet, stationery, computers.
Well,
This is the jam factory, so-called. It actually was a jam factory once. Most recently it was an art venue. It had regular art exhibitions and also a cafe and bar. It's closed. This is La Croissanterie, which was a fairly basic cafe selling croissants, as the name suggests, other pastries, coffees, breakfasts and so on. much used by people going to the station. And I'm fairly sure that's been closed for about the same length of time as Effe's Metse bar, 2009, 2010 or so. And it just gets shabbier and shabbier and is never used for anything. I'm not at all sure about Makespace Central. I've done something that I don't normally do on these videos, which is to cut quite a considerable distance from the footage. I'm now on the other side of the station bridge, well along Botley Road, roughly opposite Binsey Lane on the north. And this is the last abandoned shop on my list. They used to sell bread here. Some of the bread was made by a so-called breadmeister or broodmeister, who I think lived in Abingdon. The only other distribution outlet for it in Oxford being somewhere on the Cumnor Hill. And this, I think, has been vacant for at least 6 months. And again, it's just left here. A few building materials, a mess in front of the shop, and no sign that anything's being done. It has the same brand as the shop there, which is the grocer's. And that's all I can say. Nothing happening. So, those are some of the abandoned shops of Oxford. There are many more. I just don't happen to be in the area where the rest of them are. And I would really like to know if you're from Leiden or Bonn or one of the other cities twinned with Oxford. Are things in your place as bad? See you next time. Bye.